Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me here on Their Fight Story. I have with us again Dewan Owens, a great fighter
Yeah.
and friend, that will be talking about where do we go from here. There is so much going on in this world right now that we're going to take it to him so he can elaborate and tell us what's going on, how he's handling it, and thank you. Dewan?
Mhm. Well, yeah, I mean, no need to sugarcoat it. I think everyone's aware of the racial and political climate in the country right now, and also how that's kind of galvanized the world, on the and I think, as I don't want to say sloppy, but how disorganized some aspects of it have been. There's been, I think, a kind of a critical mass of people globally that are, really confronting a lot of the ills of society that were kind of swept under the rug, if we're honest about it. A lot of the things that are going on now, it's not like we didn't people didn't know. It's just, it's been kind of like a veil put over, like, I guess I'll say, the harshest realities. But because this last we'll just be honest and call it a execution, a lynching. It was so brutal. It was a slow death. The traditional, oh, I was scared, or I thought he had a gun. I mean, no, not, they couldn't pull any of the usual tactics. I mean, this was broad daylight, camera angle view, and then the fact that they couldn't even say, oh, it was one officer, it was a bad apple, because there were multiple officers who were holding him down. So I mean, I think visually, on a human level, that natural empathy that we have is resonated with more people, even outside of people who are traditionally subjugated by police officers.
Yeah, that incident really, I'm going to be honest, I haven't seen the video. Because I can't see it.
It's yeah,
I
it's
can't
tough.
see it. All I saw was like maybe the first like half a second, and it was too much for me.
It's
It
tough.
was too much. So I've seen pictures, a little pictures here and there, but I can't see the video. It's something that I cannot, I can't bring myself to see it because it's gonna stay with me.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be honest, like I'm a type of person, I'm very calm.
Hmm.
But when I saw that split second, I mean, the anger that I felt, the I had all these emotions that I never even knew humanly
Hmm.
possible I could
Hmm.
feel, because before it's, oh, this happened and it's all hearsay, like nobody really knows, but
Right. Right.
there was no question about it. There
Right.
was no
I mean,
denying it.
even after after his death, there were minutes. There were he was still applying pressure to his neck even after death. I mean, he was like crying, pleading. I mean, just he said I couldn't breathe. He called for his mother. I mean, there was no mercy. There was no justice. So I think that really it was an eye opener for some people that I guess choose to be sleep anyway. But it
Mhm.
also was I think it also was a element of just the straw that broke the camel's back, because there's so many more cases. We were still grappling with the Ahmaud Arbery case. We were still Renisha McBride, this other sister who police officers came in, said they had the wrong house,
Mhm.
executed her in her sleep. I mean, just come on. Even if you had the right house, you can't go in somebody's house and shoot them when they're in bed sleeping. You just can't do that. So I think this was just, yeah. So it was tough, and I think like I said, I think it's reached like a critical mass, and people who are normally, I'll say apolitical, even there, you see much more people kind of speaking out, and it's to a certain degree a transformative thing.
Yeah. How do you feel about everything that's how people are handling it? Not so much everything that's going on because we know
Well,
what's going on.
yeah, I think you know these things kind of take a life of their own. Like, it's not like an organized thing sometimes. I think a lot of times I've seen a lot of finger wagging from people in positions of influence, power, or people who aren't in a position to be, who aren't usually oppressed and profiled by officers. But or even like if we're talking about black folk, even the so-called black elite, that they love to trot out and finger
Mhm.
wag black people. But one thing people have to understand historically, sometimes violence or disruption is the only tool of the oppressed, because there's no legitimate means or legal means of challenging the system, because anybody in a position of power, they create the laws. So if I'm in power, one of the first laws I'm going to say is you can't challenge me on that, you
Mhm.
know. So I don't want to get too deep into that, but I think there's been some good organized protesting. I think there's been a lot of opportunists. I think there's obviously everyone's seen the videos of people stealing things and breaking things, but I think because it's not an organized effort, a lot of times there's people who are just you can't clearly see who's doing what. So there are people who have their own agendas, but that doesn't delegitimize the legitimate struggle and call for action that a lot of people again globally are doing.
What do you want to see happen from here?
I mean, I'm gonna to be honest. Like, I'm not a pessimist, but I'm also not naive. Like, I'll say it more realist. So I would like there's not gonna be a situation where after this we go to some post-racial society. The fact that we've accepted this kind of this myth that we live in a post-racial society, I mean, that's honestly the cause for a lot of why things are swept under the rug, because to admit something wrong would mean you have to do something about it. But I think that what I would like, let me get specific, what I would like is more legislation that protects you know outgroup males. I mean, just people in general. But one thing people got to understand, I don't want to go too heavy into it, but from a sociological perspective, outgroup males, or what they call the non-dominant males, is usually the highest victim of state-sanctioned oppression. That's in any society where you have one dominant group. But on a basic level, not to be so academic, I would like maybe specific legislation that is unique for who's primarily the victim of state-sanctioned violence, and in terms of like someone being unarmed. Let's be clear. Black men are 6% of the U.S. population. 6%. Black people together, even if we include so-called biracial people, is barely 13%. But if we talk about black men, it's 6%. But the overwhelming number of black men that are executed, unarmed. To be clear, unarmed, and not it's staggering. So I mean, I think a lot of times people will talk about race or class specific problems, but as soon as you start talking about class specific solutions or race specific solutions, everybody wants to be up in arms. So I think that could be a deterrent. I also think another strategy that may work well is just finding ways to hold the police academies accountable, because then they'll fix the problem themselves. A lot of people don't understand, whenever there's kind of payouts or lawsuits, taxpayers pay that stuff. If there was a situation where the actual police academy, not just that individual officer, but the academy, they had to somehow rectify that, then they would fix the problem on their own. We one thing we got to stop doing is believing these myths that it's you know it's a like it's this is a culture of violence. They're not isolated incidents. Because you don't see, if put it like this, even if it was like and I gotta be honest, because I don't want to be sugarcoating anything.
Mhm.
If there was a situation where officers were killing white women, whether there was a law or anything else, it would be changed and dealt with immediately. If white women, white children, or even white men were killed at this rate in terms of like clear cut, this person didn't have a weapon, they wasn't doing this, then regardless of what it was, the laws or this or that, it would change immediately. So we have to be honest about that. And black people also, we have to be honest about that, and not kind of not fall into these I don't want to say liberal, but these kind of tactics that a lot of times we get the dominant media will kind of socialize a certain reaction with us, and you'll see that by how they ask people questions or respond to people. They'll say, you know, someone can kill someone's mother, and they'll say, do you forgive them? Or it's like, well, that's ridiculous. They only ask black people stuff like that. I've never seen a situation where anyone asks anyone else, do they forgive somebody? No one even asked this country, do we forgive anybody from 9/11 or anything like that? And they would be disrespectful too. But I constantly see that, and I see this kind of idea where black people get to be the moral leaders or the moral teachers. Like, it's like this kind of Faustian bargain, like, oh, we'll let you teach us how to be moral, and they'll say, oh yeah, Jaquarius's mother was killed, but he's handling it with so much grace. We should take a lesson. Get out of here with that. We got to reject that garbage, because it's just, we know what it is. We really have to be serious about not only history, but look at the consistency in what seems like something that's new, because it's not, unfortunately, it's not unique. This just happened to be caught on camera from the beginning, and it was extremely brutal. But it's not something that we as a society don't know. And not to rant, but one more little thing: this base level apathy that society has for Black people, and especially Black men, that is what's used to justify and rationalize these murders. We have to be honest about that, right? I hate to make this example, but I have to. If we think about, I was talking about this the other day, we think about Nazi Germany, and Hitler could not do what he did without setting the tone, without setting the table for apathy. First thing he did is start propaganda campaigns against Jewish people. Say, oh, the Jews are responsible for this. Though the economy's going to bad, it's the Jews, the Jews, the Jews. So I know that doesn't mean that every German person was evil and was on board what he did, but they have been socialized to be apathetic. So when something happens, it's like, oh well, Jews do be doing stuff. This is the exact same thing that's going on today, but we don't learn from history. The weapon, the criminalization of Blackness, that is a cheap tactic that's used far too often, and we can see that in the language that officers use when they recollect what happened. Oh, he was like a demon. He was strong. He has superhuman powers. It's this kind of old school stereotype that somehow Black men are just superhuman. So they need to resort to this level of force. So we all have to think about our level of complicity in that, to include Black people.
Mm-hmm. Prior to the video, because we already know things have been happening, this specific event in time that we just experienced, have you ever experienced anything prior to that?
Well, not that brutal, but here's the thing, I'm aware. Hold on one second. I'm to the extent
she experienced
to the extent that I can, I try to I'll give you an example. When I was in the Marine Corps, we were young, we were overseas, we were taught that baby, can you get this with you? We were taught that if there's ever a situation where you're overseas and you're a POW, you give your name, your rank, but you already understand that you are behind enemy lines, right? As a Black man, even though I'm a Marine Corps veteran, I've been to school, I've done everything that society says you're supposed to do. I'm still aware that if I'm pulled over at that point, I'm, in this person's eyes, an enemy combatant. So I shouldn't have to do this, but they say, oh, show me your license and registration. So I just conveniently, accidentally, on purpose, show my Marine Corps ID, and then, oh, I'm sorry. One second, let me give you my ID. But that's the type of strategy. I shouldn't have to do that, because that's a level of accountability. He's different. There may be I may be held accountable by doing something to him. So I'm not naive. I'm not naive to, the reality that we live in. And to be honest, if we're really honest about it, no one in this society is naive to this. Everyone knows, but it's not. One second, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's not socially acceptable. My dog is wild. It's not socially acceptable to admit that. And I'll give you another example. So everyone saw about 2 weeks ago where this woman, she was in the park and she got into it with this, this Black guy, and she says she called the police and said, this is Black guy. All right, so here's the thing. So everybody's beating up on this woman. Oh, yes, this white woman, this and that. Now, to be clear, one, she deserves it. I'm not defending her. But what's more telling than what she did is why she thought that would work, because it would. She's essentially trying to get this man lynched. When she called him and she says, oh, an African-American man, everybody knows what that means. I'm a white woman in distress, and this big, scary Black man is trying to harm me. Everyone knows what that means, whether we admit it or not. So we have to stop playing these PC games, or we're not going to rectify it. Another reason we know, if I, as a Black man, get in a fender bender a white, a non-black person could hit my car. Let's say a white man or white woman could hit my car, a fender bender. We get into an argument, even though I ain't arguing with nobody, and I say, oh, I'm about to call the police. Like if the guy's about to run off, do we honestly think that's a threat to him? It's not. He's gonna be like, okay, call him.
Mm.
If somebody white tells me we get into something, I'm gonna call the police. In my mind, they're saying, nigga, I'll kill you. I'll get you killed. They don't have to say that. That is there. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not, and anybody who's listening to this, we understand that. So I think some radical honesty is important. Some doing away with this kind of like liberal PC stuff that just kind of veils and puts a blanket over this post-racial society, because this is, we are not treated on a fair and equitable basis in society. We know that. But so yeah, that was my thing.
When you found out you were going to be a parent,
Mm-hmm.
did your mentality change? Like thinking, wow, how am I going to raise my child? Mm-hmm. Has it changed now?
No, it really hasn't, because again, I don't care what's being shown on the media or not. I know what reality is. Mm-hmm. And a lot of black people, not that they're wrong for that, like are socialized to saying, okay, to keep from being a victim of white supremacy as an institution, not white extremism, I need to find a way to transcend blackness. And usually that's through class consciousness. If I could just be, if I can just deculturize myself, lack of a better word, you know what I mean? If I can signal that I'm different, I'm one of the special blacks, you know what I mean? If I can just find a way to kind of culturally, I don't want to use that word, but if I can, if I can signal that I'm a respectable Negro, you know what I mean? Then I won't be as vulnerable, because that at times has been an effective tactic for some people to kind of shield themselves from the harshest aspects of this system that we live in. But I'm not, my parents, they didn't lie to me. They didn't shield me. They didn't, I was there was already a sense of pride instilled into me at a young age, and it had to be, because I'm gonna be bombarded with anti-black propaganda on every level, from television, music. I don't want to go into it, but whether it's religious, every pseudoscience, every aspect, of this society,
Mm-hmm.
So I was already inculcated with positive affirmations, and I never felt like, I needed someone else to give me permission to have justifiable frustration or even rage at times, So as far as my children, it's the same thing. I just tell them the truth. I don't try to, I don't scare them. I just tell them the truth, to the extent that we can. We try to, be as safe as we can, be as strategic as we can, and just, I'm just aware of how we navigate the world. It's no different than, like, I've got two girls. It's no different than if I have to understand, okay, my daughter's gonna have to navigate this world a little bit differently than a boy. That's unfortunate, but that's reality. We're gonna be honest about that. Because there's different dangers, in certain ways. And to be naive about that, if we're honest about it, in my opinion, is to be complicit if something happens because they weren't aware. You know what I mean?
Yeah. How do your children feel about everything that they've been seeing on the television and media? And
yeah, well, they're young. My oldest is 14, my youngest is 11, so they know what's going on, they hear it, they see it, but they, it's not a situation where my children are like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. It's 2020. That they know what the world is, but they also know that, we all have the power to transform, society. Like this, consciousness. We talk about racism, the economy, all of these things, these abstractions, like they exist without people. There were no humans in the world, none of these systems of oppression would exist. So it's in our collective psyche. So, but because of that, we have the ability to change it, so they don't feel a sense of powerlessness. And I'm not knocking anybody else, but I do not teach my children that, they need to just, pray things away or turn the cheek if somebody hit them and they're gonna get theirs in a sweet by and by. Like, no, you deserve a steak in this world, no different than anybody else. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I mean they know what it is, but they're not like, bombarded. They're not, I'm not showing them stuff like, hey, watch this. But of course they're gonna hear about it. And if they
Mm-hmm.
have any questions, I ask them about it. I mean, I tell them about, I answer them as best I can.
Um, have has your wife felt any different or certain
Well,
concerns?
she's a sweetie. She's not as I would say radical as I am, as nothing, but she, has a strong sense of culture and self, and she's hurt. She's because people got to understand this affects Black people differently. When you constantly see, every damn week, and these are the ones we see. It's only because of social media. Black people getting, this is terrorism. Let's just be honest. It's state sanctioned terrorism. Like, bodies being left on the street. We've seen it with Mike Brown out there. I mean, that can have an effect on your psyche if you are not, like, if you're blindsided by it and you're not actively like putting things in to oppose that. So it affects her, so I've got to be there, and just, it's yeah, it has an effect on people. It's no different than PTSD in the military. I'll tell you this: as somebody who's deployed 2 times, the way I feel in another country, like, it's comparable to how I feel here in some ways. I mean, because of, when we think about, I guess, I don't, intersectionality to a certain degree. There's different levels of like privilege. I'm still, I'm able-bodied. I'm an athlete. Financially we're all right. I don't brag, but my wife is a boss. I always joke and say, oh, my wife is rich. They're like, y'all rich? No, we ain't rich. My wife is. But no, no, but so there's certain, we can kind of insulate ourselves from, like, the harshest aspect. But I'm not oblivious to that, and I don't use that as a reason to try to play dumb, and be like, just because my life is, or I'm not confronted with this certain ways that it's not reality. That's trash. That's garbage. So yeah, so she feels, but overall she's all right. She's putting her energy back into the work. But I think, I can't speak for all Black people, but I gotta imagine collectively there's like there's a pain there. But also with that, when that kind of, I guess, revolutionary spirit, that kind of like, resistance, that also kind of fuels people's collective ego too. Even if, I got to be honest with you, even if it's some things are symbolic to a certain degree.
Yeah. Are you exhausted?
No, I'm not. I mean, I'm like I said, I'm aware. I mean, you're talking to somebody who I like. A big part of my life is combating systems of oppression. So whether that's racism, white supremacy, whether it's gender-based violence, intimate partner violence, or anything else. Like even if I'm not a staunch advocate for specific things, I've educated myself. I'm aware of ableism. I'm aware of ageism. I understand classism. I understand. So this is not a surprise to me. It's not a shock to me. This stuff happens all the time. This just, this was just caught on tape. So, I think the main difference is just the weight that a lot of people feel that I love, and they come to me because they're like, oh man, what's this stuff? Juan always talking about this stuff. Now maybe I need to ask him. So I gotta kind of, how it is. So because like I said, this society is really, it's sophisticated. It's really set up a lot of things, with capitalism, where you can kind of put a veil over just how, like a decadent veil over just how dysfunctional things are. A lot of people, especially Black people in other countries, they see Jay-Z, Oprah, damn LeBron James, and they think, oh, everything's good. We got some Black folk making millionaires. So I guess by proxy, we millionaires, right? But yeah, don't even get me started on that. But
How is your organization, your nonprofit organization? How is
yeah. So fighting for Uganda, we're on ice a little bit right now because of the quarantine. But once these bans lift, I'm getting back over there and I'm putting in this work. It's right back to teaching these self-defense seminars. It's right back to educating people on gender-based violence, intimate partner violence, consent, talk, transformational, cultural transformation. Talking about men's role in respecting and protecting women and children, and challenging other men, their peers, peer accountability, like with all of that. Like, we hitting the ground running, because I've been cooped up in this house So once they lift them bans, I'm out. I'm going to
You're out of here.
exactly. I got to put the work in. Got to.
Have they reached out to you in concerns of, or even have you been doing marches, protests?
No, I'm not. To be honest with you, I'm not. I'm not. I don't knock anybody, but I'm not the biggest fan of some protests, only because, people are vulnerable. Like you are. So I have been to a protest. I helped organize one, but like going out there, we can't. Let me say, systems of oppression evolve, and we can't fight these systems the same way we fought them in the 50s. It can still be a tool, but that cannot be the only one. Like back then, people were trying to raise awareness. They wanted the world to see that, hey, this is happening in America. So there's some level of accountability. A country that says they're the moral police of the world, they wanted to show that kind of hypocrisy. But at this age, everybody knows what's going on. So I'm not saying there's no point in marching, but like you're not raising awareness because people know. I think more. So I try to focus on more long-lasting efforts. And again, I'm not knocking anybody, but we got to be honest. This will, once the mainstream media starts playing it, they will try to rock people back to sleep, and they will double down on what we call soft ethnic cleansing. School to prison pipeline, prison industrial complex, gentrification. Which is all still, oppression, system of oppression, but it's so much more sophisticated. So it's like, hey, it's not my fault, buddy. You just can't afford to live here anymore. You know what I mean? So anyway, but yeah, it's my life.
Yes.
So because of that, it's like fighting. I can't if I got to go far, I can't just sprint. I can't just sprint and then I've gotta pace myself. This is continuous, and these systems of oppression, they're not taking a day off. They always evolve. They always adapt. So we got to be constant with that. People who are really committed to it.
What's your take on the vandalism on some of the properties and
Yeah, it's I mean, to me, like I'm like this. I don't think that's an effective strategy for bringing the change that you want. So if people are venting, I don't like it. I don't think it makes sense, but I'm not losing any sleep over it. I mean, shit, I'm not. Is people not losing sleep? A lot of times, the people who are finger wagging about like the property, which again, let's be clear, it's not good. But there's no mention of why it happened. You know what I mean? It's and even when they trot these, these Negro whisperers out here to start, oh, y'all better vote, which again, I'm not against voting, but I'm against voting being used as to victim blame. Again, I focus on gender-based violence, so I understand the essence of victim blaming. It's when you say it. Like what does this have to do with voting? This don't have a damn thing to do with voting. With when somebody rich, their property gets messed up, or when the banks had to be bailed out, or Enron, no one's going to rich people and say like, hey, why didn't y'all vote? But as soon as something happened to black folk, everybody out there like, why didn't y'all vote? Get out of here with that garbage. So yeah, I don't think protesting is the most effective strategy for everybody. I think how people spend their money is very important in the capitalist system. Like, starving industries that benefit off of your oppression. That's important. Organizing, like I said, political organizing. Politics isn't the end all and be all, but it is a tool. But in a capitalist system, to a certain degree, your power is in your money, and your money, and that's not about how much you make. That's in your ability to organize and use it, for your benefit. So I find different ways to kind of put the work in as opposed to just marching. I'm just not the biggest. I just don't think that's the most effective way. But again, oh yeah, the vandalism. So yeah, the looting and all that is whatever. But I'm also aware that a lot of people that are doing this are not people who are out there. They're not people that are serious about ending racial injustice. They're opportunists. Some of them are just anarchists. So we got to be able to differentiate that, because the mainstream media is going to paint that image. So we got to be able to kind of discern, what's going on.
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to ask you something and I lost my train of thought.
It's all good. It's all good.
What do you? I don't even know how to say it. With everything that's going on, I guess what do you
Like
think
hope,
will
like
happen?
what I feel is
Yeah.
good. I've had to feel. Well, here's the thing. I got to quote the late great James Baldwin. He said, "Listen, I have to be an optimist because I'm alive.
Hmm.
And that to me was just, I mean, yeah, I mean, you are alive. So there's always, a chance to, I mean, we just keep going. I mean, it's no different than a fight. If I'm fighting a professional fighter and he punches me, I can't just roll over and say, like, I've got to, the best thing I can do for myself is continue to fight. So we, all of the things that the rights that we've gained and all of these things like this, that didn't come because someone said, like, well, you know what, I'm tired of oppressing y'all. No, people fought for this. They said like blood, sweat, tears, and I don't mean that figuratively, literally. So we've got to build on that revolutionary legacy, and and I don't mean just dismantling these systems of oppression, but we want to replace it with a system of justice. We are, as humans, we are not operating nearly to the capacity that we can, for the world. It's actually ridiculous when you think about it. Some of the things that still separate us, and not only that separate us, but we use as a justification to harm each other. It's ridiculous. So, but we keep going because we don't have a choice. Because, like I said, anyone who is benefiting off of death, destruction, violence, and oppression, they're not taking a day off. So,
Before you said, and this was like way in the beginning, the moral leaders, right? That, the Black people, when something happens, it's like you guys are like the moral leaders. You have to show the example of, something.
right, right.
Um,
Okay, and we've seen this many a times. We've seen times where someone is victimized, someone is brutalized. We saw it after Dylan Roof, where someone asked somebody who is maybe a family member of a victim, like, how do you feel about this? Do you forgive them? And it's like this. It's sick. It's perverse. It's this idea that our salvation is in how well we can show grace and dignity after injustice. And it's absolutely ridiculous.
do you think it has to do with the mental, emotional, and physical abuse that has happened through history that has impacted the way people react to it or expect people to react to it?
Yeah, I do think there's an element of that. I do think, like, whenever somebody's in a position of power or a position of authority, they can kind of create a reaction. It's no different than if we think about it from a domestic violence perspective. The person who's abusing you, they don't want you to hate you. They don't want you to hate them. And after they abuse you, they have what they call the honeymoon phase, where
Mhm.
they'll wine you, they'll dine you, they'll treat you right, and they'll think, yo, you changed. But it's like being in a toxic relationship. And to a certain degree, that's what I see as far as Black people in this country. Whenever something happens and it's like, you know, like, okay, well, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, but there's no change because this happens far too often, and we're none of us are naive enough to believe that there's not, like I said, some collective issue. Again, we see the same thing with the victim blaming. Whenever something happens and someone's a victim of something, the first thing they want to do is say, oh, well, this person wasn't a perfect victim, so that's
Mhm.
why this happened. He had his pants sagging. We got a picture of him in third grade sticking his middle finger up. Or in the case of Tamir Rice, who was a baby, he was 12 years old. Police did essentially a drive-by. He's too young to have a record. These jokers, the next day, Agdelia, I'm serious, they pulled up something saying, oh, his father had a domestic violence charge in 2012. Like, what? It's just, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely, it's insidious.
Wow. That's wow.
But it's so normal. But this is the thing, it's so normal. Some of us don't see it for how crazy it is. Like, it's the essence of victim blaming. Once something happens to someone, if it's a certain type of Black, they'll say, oh, and he was a college grad, or he was this. So what? I don't care if this joker was just got out of jail and he was on parole and he was also robbing a store. I don't care. In this country, we're all afforded rights, and police officers are not supposed to be the judge, jury, and executioner. In this country, you're innocent until proven guilty, and you have the right to a trial. So all of that victim blaming, it doesn't mean anything, because that's what it is. It's victim blaming.
Wow. I love the like the way you explain that because it just because it's a different scenario doesn't take away from the fact because there's a victim blaming, there's the smear campaign that they do
Yep.
gaslighting
Yep.
where you did something, oh no, you didn't do anything. So all that trauma that is even generational trauma.
It is. And
And
we have a collective psyche and a collective acceptable response. So and that's also, you know, passed down by elders in our community, but also is perpetuated through the media by how they reward somebody for saying and doing certain things. So if somebody kills somebody in my family and I'm like, you know, look, F that, I want justice, forget this, that's not deemed as rational or something. So it's just like I said, it's ridiculous.
wow. I'm gonna be honest, I'm still on that little boy, the 12-year-old. My mind is
Yeah,
still there,
yeah,
how
yeah. I mean,
they can
we
just bring
gotta we
something.
like I said, that goes back to us being honest. We have to be honest. This was a drive by. This was a drive by.
Yeah.
They played the tape. It was less than 2 seconds, 2 full seconds since they pulled up, got the car, and shot. So you can call it what you want. If it was somebody in the hood, you know these conservatives love using Chicago as a metaphor for black people. If it was in Chicago and somebody did the same thing, they would have said it's a drive-by. So just because someone's in a uniform, it doesn't mean that they're exempt from um, laws
Yes.
of the legal system and humanity. Because it's still people.
Yeah. I mean, I feel the people who don't honor the code that they were instilled, they're just cowards. And it's sad that, you know, yeah, I mean, it's just like everything in life. One person does something wrong, and now you have to spend your whole life trying to make up for somebody else's mistake, make
Hmm.
up. But the
Hmm.
problem is all the innocent lives that have to go through all that in
Exactly.
order, you know what I mean, to have some sort of justice.
Yeah.
But then, is there really justice?
I mean, we need a serious reform of the way police black people in this country. I don't want to get too deep into it, but everybody that can do the research, we got Google these days. So, just do some research on the history of the American police system and how that was an outgrowth of what they used to call slave patrols or night watch or patty rollers, direct outgrowth to that. And to a certain degree, the policing of black bodies, it has not changed much. There has not been a time in recorded history that black people were not victimized by the police in this way. We can look at pictures from the 50s, the 30s, and we can hear written record. We can see written record. The same thing happened in the 1920s, 100 years ago, and the same narratives. Except instead of African American, it might have been Negro boy or Negro girl, but it's the exact same thing. So we gotta, we just like I said, we gotta be serious about reckoning with that. Um, and yeah, just telling the truth.
I mean, it's sad that now, I mean, you have the police who have to try. And because I have family members that are police officers, you know
Me
what I
too.
mean? And it's
Yep.
scary where you don't, I mean, it was already scary to begin with, you know what I mean? But
Right.
now it doesn't
It's
even
tough now.
matter. Now you have a
Yeah.
shield, boom,
Yeah. There's a
you're a
big,
target.
for
And it's
sure,
just like,
for
so
sure.
you're black, you have a shield. I mean, everybody's a target now. Everybody is a target. And it's sad that there has to be some sort of change where everybody can be safe.
But the thing is, police or legislators, they're going to have to do that. Like it has to be, and it's not about good cops and bad cops. Listen, a cop can be a good cop and just do his everyday duty of policing black people the way he's supposed to, and it can still be unequal. So it's not about it's in the culture of this country. So, and I'm not saying it's not like that in other countries, but we live here, so we're talking about here. So we got to be honest about that. So if we live in a system that is just at its core racist in ways, we can't expect the police to be different. So it's not about each individual officer. It's just the way that implicit bias is normalized, and the criminalization of black people, especially black men, especially able-bodied heterosexual black men, is normalized. And we just, like I said, there's a level of complicity at certain levels to all aspects of society. Um, and like I said, I think that base level apathy serves as a rationale for that to keep happening, because if there was outrage, if there was genuine collective outrage like we see now, you'll see people talking about things that you haven't heard people talking about. There's people out here talking about defund the police. There's other people that are saying like outright abolish the police. That are so regardless of what happens of that, I'm not about why I feel about those, but the type of conversations that are happening is because of that collective outrage. But that it's been a long time coming. You know what I mean? So just some maybe a middle ground, meeting in the middle, like a reflection of like not a reflection, but some assessing. I think that's long overdue, and I honestly do think, I know I've said something that may sound pessimistic, but from an optimist perspective, I do think that the conversation, that people are reckoning with a lot of things, and the country's having some internal dialogue that hasn't happened in a substantial way. So in that regard, it's a wonderful thing.
All right. Thank you, Dewan. Do you have some final thoughts for our viewers?
Yeah, I just want to say, you all knowing something, like analyzing something, like knowing, admitting the truth is not wrong. It's not, it's the first step. We are in a culture of like political correctness, and like that's very dangerous in some ways, because you can't say the word black, but people can practice anti-black violence. So we can't say black. So even black people, black as me, can say, they can't even say black. They gotta say people of color or this and that. Like all of these ridiculous things. Like we gotta be honest. And after honesty, then we can really assess. But I also think like before waiting on legislation and things like that, like I said, society exists in our consciousness. So whatever the society is going to reflect the consciousness of a people. So the power that each of us as individuals have is just in our interpersonal relationships and influence that we have over people in our lives that we care about, family, friends, and things like that. So just seeing the commonality that we all have, and how the investment and the stake that we all have in this country, and how if any segment of society is not operating at their fullest potential, then that means the country, and to a certain degree, the world is not operating at its fullest potential.
Thank you so much, Javon. I really appreciate your time.
Yep. I got all the time in the day for this important conversation. Thank you so much for, not shying away from this. I mean, this is a tough conversation to have, and a lot of people, it's kind of this paralysis by analysis. They're like, oh man, I don't know what I do. Should I make a statement? Should I this? Should I that? But sometimes a quick analogy, when I was young, I would clean up the kitchen. I would sweep stuff under the refrigerator. I mean really young. I know y'all like, man, go on, try to that. I was young, damn it, elementary school. but when you get older, you realize, oh, I got to clean up. I got to move that refrigerator, and I got to sweep that up. Then you get a little bit older, a little bit more grown. You start your own house. You actually have a stake in it, right? That's not just someone else's. Then you move the refrigerator, you sweep it, and you mop it too. Yeah. So we gotta do that. We gotta lift that. The rug is lifting, and we see what's under there. So what are we gonna do? Are we gonna put it back down, or are we gonna say, okay, let's clean this thing?
Yeah, it's important that everybody remembers that we all have a voice, and in order for us to get where we need to be, we need to hear each other.
Exactly.
And we need to come to an understanding. And it's not my way, it's not your way, it's the right way. So we have to figure it out.
I agree, and I think we're taking a step. I think we're taking a crucial step. I've seen more honesty in the past few weeks than I've seen on mainstream media in a very, very long time. And it's like I said, it ain't never too late to come home. It ain't never too late to do right. So
yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right, take care. Be safe.
You too. God bless you.